Hey, this is Jeff, and really? Dude, doing an intro. Plenty of rail, you gotta stand right here. Thank you. Anyway, welcome back to Fallout 3, Pacifism and More. Last time we escaped from Vault 101 and updated the mod so that picking up the BB gun from your room isn't a death sentence for Butch's mom. We made it to Megaton, where we were pretty fortunate that Crazy Wolfgang's caravan was just leaving because he saved us from a giant ant, and we did some trading. Since we sold most of our disposable loot, visiting Moira wasn't a top priority, which was fortunate because talking to her can trigger a bug which I've since fixed, but there's nothing to show you right now because the symptom won't manifest until much later in the game anyway. I'll explain better when we get into the modding details at the end of the video, but the short version is, if you read the scouting report on the Overseer's terminal before you leave the vault, and then you ask Moira about the vault suit hanging on her wall right there, it breaks some dialogue in a later quest. The bug doesn't prevent a no-kill run, so the fix falls squarely in the "and more" part of the mod, but since it's now fixed, we can ask her about anything we like.
Hey, I hear you're that stray from the vault. I haven't seen one of you for years. Good to meet you. I'm Moira Brown. I run Craterside Supply, but what I really do is mostly tinkering and research. Say, I'm working on a book about the Wasteland. It'd be great to have the foreword by a vault dweller. Help me out, would you?
Since the bug is now fixed, it's safe to ask, where'd you get the vault suit back there?
I'm pretty sure I remember a girl coming into town with that about 12 years ago. She didn't know a thing about the wastes, and I knew she'd get herself hurt without some sort of protection. So I offered to armor her vault suit. Never saw her again. Probably died out there, poor thing. In a way, she gave me the idea to write this book. It's yours, if you help.
Sure, I've got plenty to say about life in the vault.
Great! Just tell me what it's like to live underground all your life, or to come outside for the first time, or whatever strikes your fancy.
It was paradise down there. No fear, no worries, no fighting, until Dad left.
A runaway dad, huh? I've seen plenty of them before, but none with the big 101 on their back. Good luck finding him. Maybe the armored vault suit will help you out there, huh? That'll be good for the book. In fact, want to help me with the research? I can pay you, and it'll be fun. With a little ingenuity, you can turn a pile of junk into a mountain of caps. And there's no shortage of junk. So, will you help out?
I'm not sure I'm really qualified to help with a survival guide, but I'll try.
All right, then. Now, I think the first chapter will have to be about surviving day-to-day dangers. There's an old Super-Duper Mart not far from here. I need to know if a place like that still has any food or medicine left in it.
Okay, I'll check the Super-Duper Mart.
Oh, great! Food is most important, but see if you can get medicine, too. And if there's nothing to find, then just come back in one piece, okay?
Well, if I survive, I guess that means I'm qualified. First, let's see what you have for sale. As nice as it was of Moira to give us the armored vault suit, she also had leather armor for sale, and after she repaired it for us, it has much better damage resistance, so I put the vault suit away in the house. If you've seen many of my other videos, you know my playstyle tends towards stealth and mobility, wearing light armor or no armor, but it might be fun to get out of my comfort zone and try being more of a tank, especially with the extra hit points from high endurance. On one hand, that probably works a lot better if you can dish out as much damage as you take and kill them before they grind you down. On the other hand, stealth and mobility tactics work because it lets you kill them before they see you, so being a pacifist throws a big wrench in either one of those playstyles. Our best chance of survival is being able to do what we need to do without even being seen, but if that goes wrong, being able to survive long enough to make a hasty exit. Broadly speaking, the heavier the armor, the more protection it gives, but as demonstrated in the Run Speed Demystified video, the heavier your equipped armor, the slower you run. If and when we find power armor, I'll give it a try, but I wouldn't be surprised if it turns out something like leather armor might actually be the sweet spot. And we're in danger already. Probably should have been sneaking the whole way. Whatever it is, hopefully we can get out of its pursuit radius before it catches up. Using the terrain never hurts. Jumping over obstacles that enemies will have to backtrack and go around, that kind of thing. What is it? Ow. There's nothing hot on our heels, so it's probably... yeah, a blowfly. Anyway, finding Dad is still the top priority for Luz, but there are a few reasons for her to think running a few errands for Moira might be the best way to accomplish that. First, Moriarty might tell us where Dad went if we shake down Silver for some money she allegedly owes him, but since he already spilled the beans about GNR being the place to go for information about current events in the capital Wasteland, Luz thinks she might be able to find it herself without a map marker by triangulating the position with her Pip-Boy radio. There are a number of hidden bunkers scattered around the map that you can find with exactly that technique, so taking readings while we explore a few widely spaced locations for Moira seems like it might work. Second, no killing means no bodies to loot, and she'll need money for meds and armor maintenance, so she can't afford to turn down paying jobs. And finally, everybody says the downtown ruins are extremely dangerous, so learning to survive and live off the land before she gets too far away from safe lodging and friendly merchants seems like a good idea. And I have no idea what those raiders are fighting, but that might be a good opening to sneak around the other side of the building. It looks like they're still distracted, and even better, it's getting dark. Which brings up another dilemma. Light has a significant impact on enemies' detection chance, so I'll probably be doing as much as I can at night, which makes it hard to see what's going on in the video. And what you'll be squinting to see is long stretches of unbearable boredom where I'm creeping forward a few feet, standing still for as long as it takes for enemies to patrol past me or look the other way, then creeping forward a few more feet to the next available cover. And I'll have to be focused and alert, so I'll either be babbling incoherently or not saying anything. I'll probably edit it down to the inevitable places where that boredom is punctuated by extreme oh crap moments when I get spotted. In addition to Moira's objectives, I am going to loot anything with good value to weight ratio that I find along the way. Oh yes, 2 stealth boys. That's an extremely lucky random spawn. I was thinking about settling for the basic reward for half-assing the mission if the optional objective went sideways, but now we can definitely get to the pharmacy. Do not turn this way. Good. Getting past the 2 behind the counter is going to be tricky, but... oh. He's coming back. Oh, it's not him, it's her.
Scared, just like a little bitch.
Keep walking.
Yeah!
That's it. Go. Locked. I can't afford to change into the utility suit with these guys shooting me. Screw it, let's go get the key. Which Luz got a sudden premonition is in the, I don't know, deli counter or whatever it was. If you didn't see the first episode, I'm forced to resort to metagaming like that. I'm reconciling it with my role-playing purist tendencies by saying Luz has unreliable but intermittently useful psychic powers. I know there are chems that weigh less and are worth more than those quantum bottles, but they're shiny, so grabbing them makes more sense in terms of both role-playing and the meta-reality that if I spend more than a few seconds in here, I'm going to get cornered and die. And I didn't use those stealth boys. Brilliant. Well, now I'll still have them for an even bigger emergency later. I don't think the ones in here will follow you outside, but the ones outside will probably take over. Grab some free Nuka on the way past. Well, I don't hear any shooting. Still in danger, though. Hightail it back to Megaton. Don't see anything red on the compass. There's a red tick right in our path, but it looks like it's chasing something non-hostile. Maybe an Ibot or a Brahmin or something? No, it looks human. Oh, I think it's Brian Wilkes. I've never been this happy to see him before. He's immortal, so he'll keep them nice and occupied. All right, we'll go around the other way and hopefully be long gone by the time they get tired of chasing him to Grey Ditch. Oh yeah, almost forgot one of the main reasons we did that. Turn on the radio and see how much strength the GNR signal station has.
Hello, Capital Wasteland.
Well, that's pretty clear. Definitely not like it was in Megaton. With intelligence 9, I don't think it's far-fetched at all to think Luz paid attention in Mr. Broch's geometry class. A circle can be defined by any 3 points on its circumference, so if we find 3 spots where we lose the signal and draw a circle that intersects those 3 spots, the GNR transmitter should be in the center of that circle. Home sweet home at last. Whew. The radio's pure static now. I'll turn that off. Well, that could have gone better, but it could have been much worse. I'm going to sleep 1 hour to get our hit points back and then wait until the well-rested bonus wears off, and by that time, Moira should be open.
So, how's the scabbing been? Got the food and medicine from that super-duper mart?
It wasn't easy, but I got the food and the medicine.
Really? You did? You did! Well, all right. Tell me all about it.
Those raiders must have shot me 20 times. But who's counting?
You do what you need to do to get food and medicine, I guess. It's not pretty, but I guess that's the way it's got to be, right? Landmines are one of the few dangers out there that you can profit from. Disarm one before it blows, and you can sell it for plenty of caps. I've heard stories about a ghost town that's just full of mines. Traders just call the place Minefield. I hear there's a playground in the middle of town. Reach that point and come back, and I'm sure you'll have some stories to tell.
All right, looks like they gave up. I wasn't really planning to come here, but it's directly on the straight line between Megaton and Minefield. Which brings up another dilemma. Companions. Short version, I'm not going to pick up dog meat. On one hand, companion kills don't increment the player's kill count, so they wouldn't technically violate the conditions of a no-kill run, and there have already been 3 times when Luz refused to kill something herself but didn't have a problem with letting someone else do it. Granted, the first was when she was a little girl and Dad was trying to teach her about the realities of survival. The next was when she actually loaned Butch her baseball bat to save his mom from radroaches, because obviously a human life is more important. Most recently, she was grateful to Crazy Wolfgang for saving her from a giant ant. So having a bodyguard doesn't seem like it would be grossly out of character. But on the other hand, having a follower would make it really easy to abuse the spirit of the challenge. So unless we run into a quest I just can't complete without help, and I can't think of any lore-friendly way to provide an alternate solution with the mod, Luz is going to go it alone. I thought about waiting for night, but I decided it was probably safer to do this by day. I never approached the town from this direction, so I didn't realize getting around this wall was going to take us uncomfortably close to Arkansas's sniper perch, but being shot isn't really the biggest threat. He's hard-coded to blind fire into the street whenever you approach the town, and when he hits a car, it can set off a chain reaction. If you're in too much of a hurry to get away from that, you'll run into more mines that haven't gone off yet. So I figure being able to see where we're going is more important than the stealth bonus from darkness. He's shooting. Oh, and there's a car going to go off. Disarm that mine and get out of the blast radius. Any second. On the plus side, that should have cleared out anything that can explode on this side of the playground, so as long as he doesn't spot us, we're golden. I don't want to get shot with a sniper rifle, but we're still hidden, so we should be fine. He'll keep blind firing as long as we're in the area, but nothing to worry about. Probably. There's Arkansas. Not shooting at us. Let's go.
My very own landmine! Oh, just what I've always wanted. Well, always since I sent you out on this anyway. Now, tell me all about it. What was it like going through there? What's it like disarming a landmine?
There may have been an explosion or two. Oh, and a sniper. No big deal.
Oh, well, if that's all, I'll just study this and hope there aren't any more explosions, shall I? So I need you to get a bit of radiation poisoning so I can study its effects. Oh, not a deadly dose, of course. I can fix you up before that.
Unfortunately, Minefield was in the wrong direction to find another point on the circumference of GNR's broadcast range, and the objective to get irradiated doesn't really help with that either. We could trace the whole boundary zone with the radio, and that might actually be viable if we could defend ourselves against anything we ran into along the way, but at this point, I think Luz has no choice but to have a chat with Silver. Look, just give me the caps and I'll tell Moriarty you're gone.
Look, I don't know who you are. I'm not just handing over my life's earnings to you.
Okay. Some of the caps and I'll tell him you're gone?
You do that for me? I never expected anyone to care enough. Here you go. Thanks, kid. You're all right.
You took care of our little lost lamb, eh? I knew I could count on you. How about you just hand over 100 caps and we'll call it even?
Wait a second. I handled silver for you and you still want me to pay?
It's called economics, kid. You got something I want and I got something you want. Nothing's free. I told you the favor would earn you some caps if you really took care of it. Now fork 'em over.
Fine, here's your 100 caps.
Now that wasn't so difficult, was it? Your dad came through here all right. Didn't stay long, though. Said he had some important business to attend to and headed off to the city. Something to do with Galaxy News Radio. Guess that'd be the place for you to start. Good hunting, and thanks for the caps.
Well, that confirms what we already suspected, but more importantly, now we have a map marker. Fast traveling to the Super Duper Mart is risky because the raiders are probably still around, but if we're really lucky, they chased Brian all the way to Grey Ditch and got killed by ants. I don't see anybody. So far, so good. There shouldn't be anything we can't sneak around or outrun in the metro tunnels at level 3. And Moira wants us to get irradiated anyway, so we'll just swim across the river and save ourselves some trouble with raiders. And speaking of the map marker, after I gave up on the triangulation method and talked to Silver, I saved and did a little experiment to see if it would have worked, and it turns out it wouldn't. The triangulation actually worked much better than I expected. It zeroed in perfectly on GNR's transmitter, but I completely flaked on the one big flaw with that plan. As we'll soon learn from 3Dog, the transmitter is nowhere near the studio. I made a video about that experiment last week. I'll put a link in the description if you want to see it in action. Well, there are the super mutants, so any second... Yep, there they are.
We're crashing your little party, so keep your head down.
Yeah, that's what I was doing until you guys ran up and started shooting. I'll just be over here, all right?
Get out of there, behemoth.
Nope. You're doing great, guys. You got this. Is it dead?
God damn it.
Nice work.
I am 3Dog, jockey of discs and teller of truths, lord and master over the finest radio station to grace the wastes, Galaxy News Radio. And you, well, I know who you are. Heard about you leaving that vault, traveling the unknown, just like dear old Dad, huh? Met him already. He heard old 3Dog on the radio. Figured I knew what was what out here in the capital wasteland. And he was right, so I filled the old man in. But he split. Looks like I've got my way of contributing to the good fight, and he's got his own.
Whatever you say. I'm just looking for my dad.
Hey, not everyone's cut out for bigger and better things. Sometimes the smallest roles in the good fight are the most important. If you want to know more, you're going to have to contribute to the good fight.
Look, 3Dog, if I find my dad, maybe he can help with the good fight.
Well, your dad is some sort of scientist type, some kind of egghead or something. You really think if you find him, he'd help our cause?
I know he will. He's always talked about doing what's right.
When your dad passed through here, I spent a good long time talking to him about all kinds of stuff. He mentioned some scientific mumbo-jumbo which didn't make much sense to me. Something about a Project Purity. He also said something about going to visit a Dr. Lee in Rivet City. Then he left in a hurry.
Rivet City? Where's that?
You've never heard of Rivet City? Wow. Just wow. Well, a whole bunch of eggheads got together and turned a beached aircraft carrier into a town. Pretty cool, huh? Just follow the river south from here. There's no way you can miss it.
Excellent. We failed literally every speech check we tried so far, but the game finally cut us a break. I was not looking forward to the Museum of Technology. And we level up. Once again, I'm going to put all the skill points in Sneak. That's slightly wasteful because there are around 50 points worth of skill books in the game, but avoiding detection is too important to wait on finding them. And for the perk, Educated just unlocked at level 4, so we'll obviously take that. And now I'm going to run back to Megaton, stash anything I want to keep, sell the rest, and head for Rivet City. Deja vu. But if we swim the whole way, we'll be nicely irradiated from Moira by the time we get there. And more importantly, nothing can attack us while we're underwater. Just need to pop up for a breath of air once in a while. Oh, of course. Well, it's still better than trying to run past them on the riverbank.
It's you. My heavens, you look so much like him. You're James's daughter, aren't you? What are you doing here?
You know my father? Have you seen him?
Well, yes, of course I do. Don't you know who I am? I suppose James never told you. Typical. I'm Dr. Madison Lee. I worked with your father many years ago. Your mother as well, in fact. You'll have to forgive me, this has all been very stressful. What with your father suddenly showing up here after being gone for so long. You have to understand that we put all of that behind us. Project Purity, our work, all of it. We've moved on, even if your father hasn't. Predictably, he refused to listen to me. He says he can prove it will work and headed off to the old lab. It's in the old Jefferson Memorial building, northwest of here. Please, don't go after him. It was foolish of him to even think about going there alone.
Nope. Dad can't be in there because if he was in there, he'd be dead. And if he was dead, I'd feel it in my heart. And if we're going to be sneaking around super mutants to find a diary or maps or whatever, we need to be better prepared, so we'll just swim back to Megaton and get irradiated enough for Moira's bonus objective, get cured, get her armor repaired, and stock up on stim packs. Ah, no tough option because of the radiation debuff. Well then, just do your examination and fix me up, please.
You're a mighty lucky one, you know that? At this state, most people'd have trouble standing up, much less walking over here. Now, let me take a few notes, and I'll handle that nasty radiation with a bit of my own homemade rat cure concoction. Mole rats can burrow into almost anything and cause a lot of trouble. So I figured I'd make a chemical repellent stick for people to shoo them off. It'll be easy. One tap with the applicator, and it overwhelms their senses with a sort of feel-bad sensation. Then they're gone before you know it. You could test it out on just a few mole ratties, but for real testing, try it on 10 or more. There should be plenty in the tepid sewers downtown.
Luz is really starting to like Moira. The Wasteland Survival Guide is a noble endeavor, and the topics are all about how to adapt and coexist, not the most efficient way to kill. The research has been dangerous, sure, but she's learning things that'll be useful in the search for Dad. Might have been nice to have the Molerat Repellent sooner, since we got attacked on the way to Minefield and on the way to GNR, but better late than never. And there's one now, so let's hope it works. Haha! Bet you didn't see that coming, did you? In the vanilla game, the Wasteland Survival Guide can't be completed during a no-kill run because it turns out the Molerat Repellent is lethal to them. One way to mod around that would have been to auto-complete the objective in Moira's dialogue with an appropriate skill check or maybe the Animal Friend perk. Several of the other objectives could be bypassed in exactly that way, so it wouldn't seem out of place. But I thought this was a better solution. Despite being eccentric, Moira is pretty competent. Like, her radiation cure worked perfectly. Plus, she sells 2 medical upgrades for your house that are extremely useful, and she heals you as well as any doctor in the game when you get to the injury part of the quest, so she's obviously a genius with chemistry and biology. Now, let's see if we can find the mole rats that chased us earlier and complete the bonus objective. And if we're still short after that, I'll swim down to the tepid sewers and shoo a few in there.
Oh, I can't wait to hear how the repellent's working.
You still have the option to lie to her, as always, but with the mod, it's reversed. The lie is that the repellent killed them, and the truth is it worked. I tested the Molerat Repellent extensively.
Oh, excellent! Substantial field testing, precise reports, and such dedication. What more could I ask for in a research assistant? So, how did my chemical repellent work? Safe and clean like a charm, I'll bet.
It calms them right down. With patience, you could probably tame them.
I should mention that. Proper handling of mole rats could be important if they could be domesticated. Milked, maybe? Oh, anyway, keep the repellent. And for your trouble, here, have the leftover chems from working on the repellent. I'm sure you can find some use for them. Mirelurks are a big threat in some areas, and knowing more about them can help people learn to avoid or even outsmart them. So I picked up this observer device to study them in their natural habitat. I need you to hide one in one of the spawning pods in their lairs. And be sure not to kill any Mirelurks inside their nest. If you do, it could ruin the validity of the study.
All right, I'm going to get my armor repaired, save, and show you how I did all that. Okay, first I'm going to show you the invisible bug with Moira and the Overseer's terminal. The quest script for MS-16, Trouble on the Home Front, has a variable, past opening, that keeps track of what you know about the previous openings of Vault 101, if anything. It's used as a condition on some of the dialogue with Amata and the Overseer if you go back. The scouting report on the Overseer's terminal sets it to 2, which means you got the full story. Asking Moira about the vault suit on her wall sets it to 1, which means you know you're not the first person to leave the vault, but not the exact circumstances of the previous expedition. See the problem? Talking to Moira makes the game forget you read the scouting report, so you can't talk to Amata or the Overseer about it later. It's not a big deal, and not at all related to the no-kill run, but it always bothered me, so I wanted to fix it. If we search for that variable, we see that it's used in about half a dozen different topics. The one I find particularly interesting is MS-16 Amata Welcome 3C, which has 2 versions. One if past opening is 0, meaning you don't know anything about the vault being opened previously, and one if past opening is equal or greater than 2. But why greater than if the only valid values are 0, 1, or 2? Well, I'm just guessing here, but it seems to me that they originally intended for Moira's dialogue to set past opening to past opening plus 1, not simply to a hard-coded 1. That way, if you didn't read the scouting report, so the starting value was 0, it would become 1. And the dialogue for the case where you saw the vault suit of Moira's, but you don't know the whole story, would work as intended. If you did read the scouting report, so the starting value was 2, the value would become 3, and this version where you know everything would also work as intended. So as you might expect, the fix starts with overriding Moira's MS-03 Vault Questions 1B topic and changing the result script. It's not quite as straightforward as simply changing it to past opening equals past opening plus 1 because of a similar issue to what we ran into with Butch last week. The topic can be repeated, so if we set the Say Once flag here, then you'd still be able to pick the vanilla version later and the bug would manifest itself anyway. But if we don't set the Say Once flag and this code runs more than once, the game would act like you read the scouting report even if you didn't. So the code is slightly more complicated. If the value is 0, we set it to 1. If it's 2, we set it to 3, and otherwise we do nothing. Because if it's already 1 or 3 when this code runs, it means it's not the first time the player picked this topic. So far so good, but then the plot thickens. Anytime you change how a variable that already exists in the game gets set, you need to be sure your change will work in all the places that variable is used, which is why I did that search. And in all but one of these cases, it will work. The only exception is a line that has another bug that will be much easier to explain when we get to that point of the game, so I'll cover it when we get to it. Now, the Wasteland Survival Guide. Moira's new dialogue when we complete the Molerat Repellent objective works exactly like what we did previously with Dad and Butch, finding the existing topics in MS-03 and overriding them in APAM dialogue. There are just more than you might expect because the basic objective and the bonus objective each have different options for sincere, snarky, or high attribute scores. But making the Molerat Repellent actually work required a departure from my usual design philosophy. Forgive me if this gets too deep in the weeds, but explaining why I did it the way I did requires explaining a little bit about different kinds of mod conflicts. Broadly speaking, there are 2 kinds. I'll call the first category load order conflicts, which I talked about in previous episodes. if two mods change the same base object, whichever mod is loaded last in your mod manager takes precedence, and the changes in the other mod are ignored. It's the most common type of conflict because preventing it can be complicated. I'll call the second category runtime conflicts. They aren't as common because doing things the hard way to avoid load order conflicts also tends to prevent runtime conflicts, but sometimes it can't. For example, say you have a mod that gives Dad glasses and another mod that gives him a baseball cap. If they both did it the easy way, just dropping the desired items into the inventory tab of his NPC screen, they'd have a load order conflict, and whichever one loads last would win. If they both did it the polite way with a script that adds the desired items into his inventory at runtime, not only would that avoid a load order conflict, but they wouldn't interfere with each other at runtime either, and he'd just have a baseball cap and glasses. But if the hat mod gave Dad a Raider Wastehound helmet, which covers both the hat slot and the glasses slot, he'd have both items in his inventory, but he could only wear one of them at a time. That's what I mean by a runtime conflict. So I could avoid a load order conflict with other mods that change the Molerat Repellent by creating a copy with the desired effect and overriding Moira's dialogue to give you the copy instead of the real one. But there's not really any point because then it would just have a runtime conflict instead. The player would never receive the version of the repellent stick that the other mod changed. But there are two other factors in play. First, weapons that do non-standard damage typically involve multiple object types. At a minimum, the weapon object, and an object effect, which includes one or more base effects. For ranged weapons, you also have ammo, but that's not relevant here. Base effects can be things the game provides out of the box, like, say, bonus fire damage, or they can be entirely new and unique, which you typically create with a script and possibly some new visual effect, which is yet another object type. All I had to change to make the Molerat Repellent non-lethal was the effect script, so if another mod changed the appearance or attributes of the weapon object, or even if it adds to the object effect list, there's no conflict. The only conflict would be with mods that change the script object. And that brings me to the final factor. I searched the Fallout Nexus and only found one other mod that changes the repellent stick. Molerat Quest Fix, which fixes a rare bug where the repellent stick won't explode the Molerats. And it does change the script. But obviously, even if we avoid a load order conflict, we're going to have a runtime conflict because the two mods have completely opposite goals. All of which is a very long-winded rationalization for the fact that in this case, I did decide to modify the script directly despite the fact that it creates a load order conflict. The change itself is pretty simple. In the section that runs when you hit a mole rat with a stick, I removed the code that frenzies them and replaced it with code that makes them flee. And in the section that runs when the script effect ends, I just removed the one line of code that makes their head explode. And that's it. Now we have an effective, non-lethal Molerat Repellent. Well, that's it for now. Like the video, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and we'll see where the search for Dad takes us next time. Spoiler warning. It's back to the Jefferson Memorial, and if Moira happens to give us an objective to get seriously injured for her studies, we'll probably be able to accommodate her in there. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in a couple weeks.